I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, the American vice president wraps up his trip to Israel. The Israeli government is set to exhume the bodies of 17 Yemenite children for genetic testing. And it looks like Forbes 30 under 30 are coming to the Holy Land. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. U.S. Vice President Mike Pence has returned to Washington following a two-day trip to Israel. The vice president concluded his visit by paying his respects to both the Western Wall and the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial in Jerusalem. Though brief, Israeli leaders have hailed Pence's visit as a welcomed step forward in U.S.-Israeli relations. Pence delivered an impassioned speech to the Knesset upon his arrival, sparking cheers on one side of the aisle and a boycott on the other. Arab-Israeli lawmakers from the Joint Arab List Party were actually escorted out of the Knesset for holding signs protesting Trump's Jerusalem decision, which read, "Jerusalem is the capital of Palestine." But Pence's harsh words for both Iran and the Iran nuclear deal have set the stage for another critical meeting. White House officials have just confirmed that President Trump will meet with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu tomorrow during the World Economic Forum in Switzerland. Renegotiating or perhaps even ditching the Iran nuclear deal will likely be at the top of their discussion. Netanyahu has promised to talk to leading European signers of the deal to discuss making real changes to the existing agreement. President Trump recently re-signed American approval of the deal, but he claims that this time is the last time he'll do so. Israel has just taken a stand at the United Nations, accusing the Human Rights Council of constant discrimination against the Jewish state and for alleged bias against Israel in favor of the Palestinians. ILTV's Aaron Porras is here with more. And so, Aaron, what's going on?
Well, Israel's ambassador to the United Nations in Geneva, Aviva Raz-Shechter, has addressed the United Nations, and she brought up a whole host of problems and complaints that she has regarding the agency's unyielding focus on Israel and biased focus on Israel. But she pointed to the UNHRC, the Human Rights Council, specifically, pointing their hypocrisies out.
What examples did she give?
Aside from the fact that the UNHRC's only permanent line item ever since its inception has been about Israel, and it continues to be a permanent line item, aside from that, Ambassador Shechter also made mention of how the body fails to recognize Palestinian abuses of human rights, fails to mention human rights abuses from other countries around the region, fails to acknowledge the positive things for human rights that Israel does, and they only focus on the negative. Just to clarify again, the UNHRC was created in 2006, and since then, in just a decade, they had 62 condemnations against Israel and none against any other country. And that was just in the first 10 years since its inception. So it's that kind of bias.
All right, well, let's take a look at your report for some more details.
All right.
Israel's ambassador to the UN in Geneva has just delivered a fiery speech slamming the International Council for decades of alleged prejudice.
The continuous discrimination against Israel in the Human Rights Council, embodied in the infamous Item 7, and the unparalleled number of one-sided bias and political resolutions adopted regularly by the automatic majority of its members testify not only to the unfair treatment of the State of Israel, but also to the deficiencies of the Council itself and its agenda.
This echoes similar criticisms from the Israeli leaders, who say that the United Nations has historically made unfair resolutions against Israel, while failing to pass even a single resolution on other far more pressing global concerns. The Human Rights Council has been historically critical of Israel's occupation of the West Bank, its treatment of Palestinians under occupation, and the state's continued construction of settlements. But as Israel's ambassador pointed out, the Council has overlooked Israel's numerous contributions to human rights as the Middle East's only democracy, including rights for women, LGBTQ rights, and religious freedom. Many feel that this comes at a time when Israel and the U.S. are increasingly finding themselves isolated from the rest of the international community, which means these words may ultimately only land on deaf ears.
Speaking of support for Israel, a new Pew Research poll has just found that while Republicans overwhelmingly support Israel at a rate of nearly 80%, Democrats are more divided on the subject than ever. Here with more about these attitudes is leading expert on criminal and constitutional law, civil liberties, and the Arab-Israeli conflict, Professor Alan Dershowitz. Professor, first, where do you think these stats came from? Why are Republicans so much more supportive than ever of Israel, and why are Democrats more divided?
Because the Democratic Party is moving very quickly to the hard left, and the hard left uses Israel as a scapegoat for the world's evils. And I think we in the United States really have a job to do if we want to keep Israel a bipartisan issue among Republicans and Democrats. We are losing young Democrats particularly, and we're losing them largely because of ignorance of the real issues in the Middle East. Why a liberal should oppose Israel and support Palestinians who oppress women, oppress gays, and don't have any kind of freedom, religious or otherwise, has always been a mystery. But we have a hard job to do to bring the Democrats into a bipartisan support for Israel. I never want to see Israel become a litmus test for whether you're a liberal or a conservative, Republican or a Democrat.
Professor, how do you predict these attitudes will change in the coming years, especially during Trump's administration?
Well, I think maybe they'll get a little worse, but when the Democrats move far left, they will continue to lose. The Democrats only win when they move to the center, and they will learn a very difficult lesson, that movement to the left is movement over the cliff, and that they will continue to lose. Republicans can't afford to move right in America, but Democrats cannot afford to move hard left. And so in the end, I think the pendulum will swing back and Democrats will understand that Israel is a very strong and positive ally for the United States.
Do you think that there's anything that Israel can do to, perhaps increase bipartisan support?
No, I don't. I think that these issues are emotional. There's no relationship between Israeli policies and how people on the hard left view Israel. The hard left opposed Israel just as strongly when they offered peace in 2000, 2001, 2008, when they withdrew from the Gaza in 2005. So this is not Israel's fault. This is the fault of the hard left in America.
All right, Professor Dershowitz, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
The U.S. State Department has just placed a top al-Qaeda leader on the terror list after he demanded violence against Americans and Jews in Jerusalem. This comes just as American officials are at odds as to how to target the terror group Hezbollah, which is politically aligned with Lebanon, a major U.S. ally. The United States currently funds and provides military aid to the Lebanese government, most recently to help fight the Islamic State. But the situation gets murky when you consider that Lebanon's parliament is aligned with Hezbollah's political wing. And as we know, the military wing is arguably one of Israel's most fierce enemies. Hezbollah also receives millions of dollars to fund terror operations against Israel from Iran, another sworn U.S. and Israeli foe. Congress has recently pursued legislation to sanction Hezbollah's military wing, but U.S. leaders are less sure as to how to confront the delicate situation of Hezbollah politically. An American official in the Treasury Department for terrorist financing has just urged Lebanon to take every possible measure to ensure Hezbollah is not a part of the financial sector. Disrupting Hezbollah's access to income would certainly put strain on the terror group, but this would require severe changes in current Lebanese politics, where Hezbollah holds considerable strength. Putting a known al-Qaeda leader on the terrorist list for demanding Jewish and American blood is a more clear-cut choice, but as in the case of Hezbollah, sometimes the fight is less obvious than we'd like to hope. Well, the Knesset has just advanced yet another controversial bill known as the Muezzin Bill. The legislation would limit the time and volume of the Muslim call to prayer, which is played 5 times a day from loudspeakers in mosques throughout Israel. There are currently 2 versions of the bill. One would block all public speaker systems used by any places of worship in Israel completely, and the other would only block them between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. Lawmakers say these are necessary solutions for Jewish citizens that live near Arab communities, who have often complained that the call blasted from loudspeakers is a public disturbance. Critics, however, have condemned this legislation for attacking the religious freedom of Muslims in Israel from practicing their faith. faith. The Muslim call to prayer, summoned 5 times a day, is one of the religion's oldest and most sacred traditions. Arab members of the Knesset have fiercely opposed this legislation from the start, famously tearing up the bill when the Knesset passed its first reading last year. Jordan has also come forward calling the idea utterly discriminatory and saying that it violates Israel's obligations under international human rights, as well as the peace treaty Israel signed with Jordan. For some tourists, hearing the Muslim call to prayer while exploring Christian or Jewish sites in Israel is often a demonstration of the country's amazing coexistence. If the government does ultimately decide to silence the calls, this is surely only the beginning of the debate. Well, one of the biggest scandals in Israeli society is the so-called Yemenite child affair. Over 1,000 Yemenite families say their babies were abducted during hospital visits or even right after birth after being told by doctors that they had suddenly died. Now, this all allegedly happened just after the foundation of the Jewish state, but now for the first time, the courts will allow 17 graves of alleged Yemenite children to be opened so that DNA evidence can be collected. This affair has been the source of intense controversy for decades. The victims, mostly new immigrants from Yemen, all have similar stories. They say that between 1948 and 1958, they'd either brought their children into the hospital or had just given birth in the hospital, when doctors suddenly told them that their children had inexplicably died. On top of that, the doctors informed them that the funeral had already been conducted without the family's knowledge. Many parents were simply given a location of their child's alleged grave, often with no or incorrect paperwork. These disturbing stories took a shocking twist years later when nearly all those parents received a letter from the IDF summoning their children to draft into the army. And in the years since, several children have actually tracked down their Yemenite parents, confirming by DNA tests that they were, in fact, the missing child. Families now believe their babies were abducted and sold to wealthy Ashkenazi parents. The Israeli government has conducted several investigations into this affair, concluding every time that although hospital doctors had been negligent, no abductions ever took place. Regardless, Yemenite and Mizrahi families have been pursuing evidence for years, and now 17 families have just won a major court battle to open the graves where doctors told them their children were allegedly buried. If the graves are empty or if the DNA of the corpses don't match their parents, it would certainly be incriminating evidence of a massive cover-up that goes all the way to the top. Unbelievable story. All right, well, early detection is always the first line of defense when fighting an illness like cancer. One Israeli company called Pink of View is now empowering women to manage their own risks when it comes to detecting breast cancer early on. Here to tell us how is the founder and CEO of Pink of View, Adi Zamir. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
So how does Pink of View work? How does it increase the likelihood of catching breast cancer in the early stages?
So what we're talking about is a risk calculator for breast cancer, and we're focusing on women that are not a BRCA gene carrier or doesn't have a family history. It means that we're focusing on 85% of the diagnosed women with breast cancer that they're based on the unknown factors.
Very interesting. So how did you come up with this idea?
After many years in the medical field and the IT world, I thought about something that will have a social impact, not only technology. And when I met people from developing countries, I understand that we must bring a solution that is not obviously a medical device or a pill. So digital health is the answer.
Absolutely. I mean, detecting this disease early on is incredibly important, right? So what have the results been like with the process that you have provided to women?
So we are in the early stage. It means that now we are in the research stage.
Okay.
We are collecting data. We have volunteers that write the alpha version, and now we're about to launch the beta version. So we are collecting data and we're learning from the data. We can allow women at this stage to use the application and see what is their risk score.
So when do you think all the data is going to be collected? When will you have the final version available?
I think that at least 1 year, because we are developing a prediction analytic algorithm that would allow us to see which woman is going to be in high potential to breast cancer before she is sick.
Well, I mean, I certainly imagine that this is a platform that is going to help a lot of women out there. This is a very serious issue that many women face. Forbes. So thank you so much for joining us and telling us about it.
Thank you.
All right, now get this. A Muslim model for L'Oreal has just stepped down following outrage over her anti-Israel tweets. Amina Khan took the world by storm when she became the first ever woman to wear a hijab in a hair care ad. She was initially praised for helping break stereotypes in magazines from Vogue to Glamour, but quickly became the face of controversy when a series of her anti-Israel tweets emerged. Israel equals Pharaoh. Both are child murderers. Inshallah, defeat also awaits the former. It's only a matter of time. That's just one example of a series of Khan's anti-Israel tweets that have since been deleted, many of which were made back in 2014 during the Gaza war. The Muslim model has apologized and stepped down from her position with L'Oreal, and the company says they agree with her decision. The entire affair comes just days after a popular Muslim social media star rejected an award from Revlon because Israeli actress Gal Gadot had been declared the frontwoman for the cosmetic company's latest ad campaign. The Muslim blogger Amani Al-Khatkhadbeh has accused the Wonder Woman of backing the oppression of females by supporting the IDF. Well, the nominations for this year's Academy Awards are in, and some of our biggest Israeli hopefuls are definitely feeling a bit disappointed. There were a few Jewish takeaways from the list of nominees, and ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh has more details.
Thanks, Natasha. Well, like you said, there were 5 really big Jewish nominations from this year's awards list. The biggest triumph by far was the film Call Me By Your Name, an adaptation of the Egyptian-born Jewish novelist Andrei Achimon's book of the same name, which got 4 nominations. The story is set in Italy in 1980s and focuses on romance between 2 young Jewish men. It's also filled with all kinds of classic Jewish themes. The film scored big nominations for Best Picture, Lead Actor, Adapted Screenplay, and Best Original Song. Jewish actor Daniel Day-Lewis, who already has 3 Oscars for Best Actor, just got nominated for his performance in Paul Thomas Anderson's acclaimed Phantom Thread. This is also allegedly Day-Lewis's final performance before he retires from acting. And what Oscar list would be complete without a little Steven Spielberg? The director's new film, The Post, is up for Best Picture.
Well, those are some pretty big nominations, but
Definitely.
There was a lot of buzz about the Israeli foreign film Foxtrot. People thought it might go all the way this year and nab Israel's first Academy Award, but it didn't even get nominated. What happened there?
I know, Foxtrot took home the Silver Lion at this year's Venice Film Festival and completely swept the Israeli version of the Oscars, the Ophir Awards, but it looks like it came short of a foreign film nomination. Everyone had their hopes high hopes for this film, that it would be Israel's first Oscar win, but they'll just have to keep trying. But if that didn't bum you out enough, then this really will kill you. The movie of the year, at least the most talked about movie of the summer, Wonder Woman, scored 0 nominations. Not even for our very own Israeli superstar Gal Gadot, who starred as the superhero herself. A lot of people were pretty shocked by the snub, especially considering how huge the movie did in box office.
You know, I didn't see that coming at all. At the end of the day, though, you know, in my opinion, these are just awards. And box office numbers say a lot more about success. So Gal Gadot and Foxtrot, we've got your back.
Yes, well, there's always next year.
Definitely. Thanks for joining us, Emmanuel.
Thank you.
All right, now get this. The U.S. Department of Defense and Israel's Defense Ministry are partnering up for a very unique opportunity. They've just announced a worldwide competition between startup companies that offer cutting-edge technology to see whose innovation can best fight terrorism. Startup companies will now compete for up to $220,000 in prizes for this year's Combating Terrorism Technology Startup Challenge. This partnership between American and Israeli defense departments makes total sense, not only because both are on the front lines of breakthrough new military technology, but because Israel also offers a wide range of territorial diversity, from desert to urban to forest terrains, all within mere kilometers of each other. That'll be an important factor when it comes time for judging. Entries will be divided into 2 categories, one for general technologies such as cybersecurity, drones, robotics, and combat safety in the field, and the other for urban navigational technologies, specifically providing maps and intel in places where GPS isn't available. The MIT Enterprise Forum of Israel is also helping put this incredible contest together. They say they're expecting hundreds of entries this year. So if you've got a startup to toss into the ring, you've only got until March 9th to submit. Finalists will be announced in May, bringing them to Israel to test their startups for a live test run in the field. The contest is open to anyone, anywhere in the world, but just to let you know, so far Israeli startups have taken home the grand prize every year. A successful business requires successful employees, so keeping them on track is paramount. Joining us now is Eugene Ochakovsky, the CTO and founder of the Israeli company Patrolit, which is focused on this very issue. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.
So what does Patrolit do? I see you have some gadgets here with you.
Yeah, so the company is developing mobile software for over 35 years. And actually, these are devices that were used. This is a smartphone from 35 years back, from 80s.
Okay.
This is a little bit more recent device. It's still used in airports and other places.
And what does it do?
And these devices were used to manage people, to manage businesses, to deliver business efficiencies and applications. And these devices were single use. They were just used for business. You couldn't talk over those phones. You couldn't send emails and chat with colleagues. Today, everybody's switching to the smartphones.
So what does your platform do?
So then what's the difference between this device and the smartphone? The difference is versatility. The smartphone, you can use it for many different applications. So our platform is a multi-application platform that delivers a lot of different solutions to enterprises, to businesses in the management, in inspections, in security. And
So this isn't just related to the employees. It's just generally managing the business.
so currently, there are tons of applications solving a single problem for business. For example, we work with property management companies. Property management, they have security, they have cleaning, landscaping, pest control, guest tracking, and there are tons of applications for each and every of those parts. We deliver a single platform that allows collaboration between different departments, different usages within the organization, and they can talk to each other. They can, a security officer finding during the patrol at night that the light is out can click a button and send it out to the maintenance department to fix it next morning.
Beautiful. All right. Well, it looks like this platform is something that could assist a lot of businesses. Thank you for joining us and telling us about it.
Thank you very much.
All right. We love reading Forbes' annual 30 Under 30 list, which counts off the 30 top business leaders under the age of 30 all over the world. Well, Forbes magazine actually ran its first Israeli 30 Under 30 countdown a few years ago. But this year, they're bringing all kinds of love to the Holy Land by hosting the very first Under 30 summit right here in Israel. The summit will gather nearly 800 of the world's most successful business and industry leaders and bring them to Israel for a 4-day program all across the country. Representing 35 countries, participants will get their very own tour of the Holy Land. They'll start off by ringing the opening bell at the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, touring the gourmet scene in Jerusalem's Machne Yehuda market. They'll hike up Masada, and they'll even have an epic beach party catered by top Jewish and Arab chefs. Young entrepreneurs work hard, so yeah, they probably party hard too. Attendees are naturally selected from Forbes' 30 Under 30 list from the US, Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. Things kick off on May 9th, so let's hope it's the first of many more summits to come. And now it's time for our Hebrew word of the day. Well, the Oscar nominations gave us a lot of good surprises, but we can't help but be a little bummed that Gal Gadot came up short. That's why today's word is muhzav, which is how you say disappointed in Hebrew. Well, it's natural to feel a little muhzav or disappointed when things don't exactly go your way, but cheer up. If you stay muhzav for too long, you won't see the amazing opportunities in front of you. Sure, maybe Gal Gadot was a little muhzavet when she didn't see her name on the list of Oscar nominees, but then again, like a real-life Wonder Woman, she might be a little too busy to care. At least we like to think so. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be cloudy with rain and thunderstorms in the north and center. The low will be about 50 or 10 degrees. Tomorrow is expected to clear up a bit, but will still be partly cloudy, and with a drop in temperatures to a daily high of roughly 58 or 14 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.41 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Natasha Kirchek, and thanks for watching.